question was, who are our online audiences and how can we better serve them? And so what we did was start out by categorizing all of the various audiences that this group think of. And we ultimately distilled it down into two categories. Visitors, people, online services that service actual visitors to the museum, and then categories that talk about non-visitors, people that probably are not likely to visit the museum at all. And so out of that, we distilled it down into about 6 different actionable items that we thought that might be relevant, something that we could actually take on as a group. One of the primary things was to talk about what Ken had brought up yesterday about the dysfunction of our websites, our public presence, and how it's confusing to some people that they don't understand our structure, they don't understand how one museum relates to the other. So, and we talked about that quite a bit at this table. We realized that this is a very limited forum for that larger discussion. So one of the action items was to create a task force to meet about that very thing, and how can have a further discussion, how can the DCA websites better serve all of our constituent groups, and how can the sites work together to tell the story of New Mexico heritage? Now that's a big task, but it's one that I know we can't solve today, and certainly it would be better served by forming a task force. How the structure of that, we didn't get into that at this point, but that's number one.
Did you talk about who might be in the task force?
We didn't. No.
Okay.
Just ran out of time.
Okay.
The other one of the other things that came up was to develop web apps for mobile devices that would serve visitors planning a trip to Santa Fe, to the museum specifically. And these dedicated web apps would go one step further, taking the information that one would find online normally from their home computer. They might print out itineraries and information, and then they have to carry this paper around with them when they actually visit. Well, obviously, so many people have mobile devices, and so the web apps would serve as a function to allow them to access the information that's relevant to their visit wherever they're at. And so that would involve developing software for either iPhones or Android or whatever, Blackberries, whatever the platform is, to allow that to happen, to extend beyond just our traditional websites. And that would be something that would certainly require funding and would be something that would be a larger effort than just internal. Then a larger discussion kept coming back to how can we enhance our existing websites to work better for us. Certainly we all saw how many websites there are, and I think they're all varying degrees of quality in terms of content. And so it kept coming back to how can we create more targeted content to our various audiences. Are we serving all of those audiences that we went over today with the content they're looking for? We talked a lot about visitors, what types of things they're looking for. Do we have easy access to kind of things like train schedules or buses or transportation? How the logistical information that they might want to find, are we making that easy for them to access? It's things like that we talked about. I was also talking about internal groups, for example, volunteers, how do they participate, and creating pages specifically targeted for them. So I think there's a lot of areas that we could look at that would just enhance what we already have without creating something new. Make collections available online. Well, that's a big task, and I know that's been talked about in other groups, but certainly to enhance the experience for our online audiences, that is a piece of the puzzle that needs to happen. And so, again, that's why we put it as one of our tasks. The other one was social media for school groups. It was talking about school groups who frequently visit museums every day, and how social media can actually help them interact or comment on their experience after they leave the museum. And there were several ideas about that, whether the teacher was giving information so that the kids could post things on Facebook, or there's some special proprietary page that they could post their comments on, but also just get them involved in the conversation. So associated with that was to allow kids to use their personal tech within exhibits. so that if they come to the museum and we're encouraging them to comment, that they can use their cell phones to take pictures, or whatever they want to do within the exhibit space to again further that dialogue with the kids. I think lastly was in the spirit of trying to enhance our websites was to create promotional trailers, if you will, for our exhibits to give visitors a better sense of what they might expect within an exhibit. That would include a short curatorial interview, imagery, and kind of be like a mini commercial for an exhibit, so that rather than just seeing an exhibit on a list on a calendar and looking at the name and trying to figure out what it's all about, that they have something more to take away with them. And that was something that we also thought could use funding and certainly could be a larger project. So that was everything that we came up with.
Clarifying questions? Is Aurelia still here?
Because she was telling me about something last week which ties really neatly into what you were just talking about, David. Was she? So that's maybe where that idea's floating. She was talking about how when kids come to the Museum of International Folk Art and they do art projects, it'd be so cool to be able to photograph the art projects and put them on their website so that they could go home and share what they made with their family. That's a simple but really cool idea.
Yeah, along those lines, the one other thing we talked about was the idea of an experience that could be photographed within a museum space and then put online. And Shelley gave the example of in Texas, there's a museum that has a bull ride, mechanical bull, and people get filmed.
It's a saddle work.
Is it? Okay, saddle work. But the idea that there's something that they've done, activity that they've done within the museum that gets captured and then gets put on a website, and they all have a reason to go back and check that. So we were talking about ideas how we could identify some activity within our museums that would be on that level, or at least exciting enough to film.